thank you, Dr. Wiggins, for coming on. This is really great. I'm super excited to have you here. There's been the past few have been really successful, and we've gotten to touch base about some really good topics and things in percussion, and so this has been really good, and I'm excited to have someone who's actually a professor and someone who's done a lot of things and is someone who teaches at the high level as well. So super excited to have you here, and thank you for joining me to do this.
Well, I'm glad to do it. I like doing these kinds of things, especially right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this weird time that we're in, it's good to connect. It's given us an opportunity to connect with people and you know, a chance to really think about things and sit down and on stuff that we normally don't get to sit down and talk about or have time to do.
Out there for a second on me.
That's no problem. That's the part of these live streams. My last one had it cutting in and out a lot, but
yeah. So, oh well, it'll be fine.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to start with just with you. I always like to do a little background on every person that I bring in. I think it's really cool to hear the different ways people are brought up in music and their different influences and their paths, that how they got to where they are, because everybody's path has been different, and it's been really cool to see how people have come to do what they do. And so if you could, I would really love to hear about like where you got started and kind of your background, a little bit of a history of when you started music and what really got you to where you are today.
I started in the 6th grade, when a lot of people do, with the obligatory beginning band fest of things. I had actually kind of gotten interested in music even before that, because I got my first drum set when I was probably 4th grade or something like that. And it was interesting because along with that, I also got Kiss's Alive 2 record, was sitting there leaned up against the bass drum when I got it. So that's what I really started with. And so when I was getting ready to go into beginning band, I knew I wanted to play percussion. But of course, you have to go through all the testing and everything like that. And as I was going through it, they said, okay, you have 2 options. You can play percussion or you can play clarinet. And I had no interest whatsoever in playing the clarinet. So it worked out well that they thought I would be okay at percussion. So I did that in high school. I was also, you can't say I was like, I did a lot of music stuff, but I was also playing baseball while I was going through school. I was playing soccer while I was going debate team while I was in high school. And so I had a lot of wide-ranging interests as I was going. But I was still playing in like band, jazz band. We had a full-fledged symphony orchestra at my high school. Like my freshman year, we took the finale to Shostakovich 5 to state MPA contest. So that was kind of that was the program I was growing up in. But, you know, as I got closer to college and stuff like that, I started thinking about what I was going to do. And my original plan was actually to get a music degree and then go to law school.
Oh, wow.
As my mother used to say, that once I started taking debate, she never won an argument with me again. And as I was doing debate and stuff like that, I like really enjoyed that aspect of it and got really interested in the possibility of law. Heard that, you know, law schools and medical schools and stuff like that are really interested in music as the undergraduate degree, because of the, you know, the focus on like particular skills and the problem solving that are involved in them and stuff like that. So that was going to be my idea. I was going to go to school, get like a music ed degree, and then go on to law school. So I got to college at Oklahoma State University and started there. And started marching drum corps also after my first summer in college. I actually marched 3 years at a corps out of Oklahoma called Black Gold. A lot of people now more know it as the WGI Indoor Color Guard Group. That is what's left of, but it used to, back in the late 80s and early 90s, it was a full-blown drum corps, top 25, type group and everything. So I marched my first year there as a tenor player, and then I marched 2 years as a snare drummer there. All while going to school at Oklahoma State, majoring in music, realizing that my time was not good. I wasn't great at reading, so I had a lot of catching up to do as I went through school too. And so it took a lot of work. I mean, I'm very open with the fact that one of my teachers told me that at one point in my studies, they weren't sure I was going to actually make it through the degree, because I just came in with deficits that really had to be worked on. And so I had to do a lot of work, and I attribute the years of drum corps to probably saving everything that I do at this point, which, you don't hear that from people that do my gig as often. But I'm very open about it that, without drum corps, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now.
Yeah.
So I did the 3 years of Black Gold, and then I marched 1 year at the Freelancers, which was out of Sacramento, California. Happened to luck out that Ralph Hardiman and Glenn Crosby did, and Sean Glide and Mike French, like a lot of great, ridiculously talented people were doing the percussion section at Freelancers that year. So that was a great experience. And everything that I teach the drumline now, I basically learned that summer. As far as my approach to how we play and everything like that.
Yeah.
So while I was going through school, I realized I was not cut out to be the middle school, high school band director type person.
Yeah.
The things and those people are phenomenal and brilliant and have all of the admiration I could ever give them, but that wasn't me.
Yeah.
I did my student teaching at Broken Arrow, which is not a normal, typical student teaching assignment.
Yeah.
So I was a little protected doing that gig. I say protected, but it was also the first year that they did any kind of BOA competition. So my student teaching was essentially doing running the drumline for them to get ready for BOA the first time.
Yeah.
But I started to realize that I had a lot of other interests. I really started to get interested in contemporary music.
Oh, cool.
I got really interested in Cage and Schwantner and people like that. And I really became a repertoire junkie. And I became obsessed with knowing rep.
Yeah.
And so I started to look at graduate schools, because also the law school thing had kind of fallen by the wayside, because it's I really kind of like this music thing.
Yeah.
And so I started looking around at graduate schools and ended up at the University of New Mexico, because at the time Chris Schultes was there, and it was really the epicenter of everything hardcore contemporary music. When I got out there to start graduate school, the first thing I had to do was audition for the percussion ensemble that was going to play at PASIC, that was doing this giant Stockhausen piece for PASIC that year. Yeah. And that was really just jumping straight into the fire of that kind of stuff. But it was a phenomenal experience, because, if you're going to study that stuff, there's not anyone that's much better or more knowledgeable. When he talks about when I worked with Cage, he means literally when he worked with Cage.
Yeah.
And so that was a great experience. I was his last student, because he had some injuries that had prevented him from really being able to play and stuff like that. And so I was actually the last student that went through and studied with him as a percussionist. So I started to look at graduate schools, because also the law school thing had kind of fallen by the wayside, because it's I really kind of like this music thing. Yeah. And so I started looking around at graduate schools and ended up at the University of New Mexico, because at the time Chris Schultes was there, and it was really the epicenter of everything hardcore contemporary music.
Yeah.
You know, when I got out there to start graduate school, the first thing I had to do was audition for the percussion ensemble that was going to play at PASIC that was doing this like giant Stockhausen piece for PASIC that year.
Yeah.
You know, and that was like really just jumping straight into the fire of that kind of stuff. But it was a phenomenal experience because, I mean, if you're going to study that stuff, there's not anyone that's much better or more knowledgeable. You know, when he talks about like when I worked with Cage, he means literally when he worked with Cage.
Yeah.
And so that was a great experience. I was his last student because he had some injuries that had prevented him from really being able to play and stuff like that. And so I was actually the last student that went through and studied with him as a percussionist.
And looking at doctoral schools, I really got interested in Ohio State University because Michael Bump was teaching there at the time. And so, you know, I've had a weird path because I started in Oklahoma, marched Durham Corps in California, did masters in New Mexico, went to Ohio to do my doctorate. But all of these have had like kind of important parts to my career because like in Ohio, studying with Michael Bump is where like I really feel like I learned how to play timpani.
Yeah.
Which if you watch like my feed and stuff like that, that's become kind of a pretty big part of what I do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I was at Ohio State for a year of residency when I heard that John Parks was going to take a sabbatical from Samford University down here in Alabama. And so they were looking at somebody to do an interim one-year appointment. So I came down, auditioned for that, was offered the position, and that one-year appointment turned into multiple-year appointments. And it was a great gig. I was really happy with it. Met my wife in Birmingham while I was living there and stuff. But in the meantime, a lot of stuff happened. Michael Bump left Ohio State, and it's nothing against Susan Powell whatsoever, but he was really kind of the reason that I had gone to OSU. And when I was away from it for a few years, I started to reevaluate what was it that I was really wanting to do, and that's when I started looking at the Hart School to study with Ben Toth.
Yeah.
And you know, they had at the time the Performance 2020 program where if you get into it, you don't pay tuition. You're paid to come to school and play high-level chamber music, and that was right up my alley at that point. But then at the same time, he had the program set up to where they've got these guest artists that are in residence for like a year cycle. So, for example, when I first got there, I had a semester of study with Glenn Velez right out of the gate. So I was taking lessons with Toth, doing chamber ensembles with Toth, and taking hand drumming stuff with Glenn Velez. Then the next semester, Joe Galeota comes in. He does the African drumming ensemble at Berkeley.
Yeah.
So he was there for a year. So I studied that with him for a year. And then my last semester, I got to study with Al Lepak, who we all know from the Freezy Lepak timpani book and his snare drum books and everything else. Yeah. So, you know, the whole time that I was studying with Toth, I was also studying with those people.
Wow.
And so it was really just the opportunity to like have all of these different experiences and different teachers and everything. And I can't say that I mastered any of the things that they taught me, but it's nice to at least know them. And then after that, I started looking for jobs. I wasn't done with the doctorate. I was done with the residency. And the job at UNC Pembroke came up.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting position because when they first advertised it, there was no actual instrument specified for the job because it was actually a marching band job. Because the job was start the marching band. And
so it was sort of open-ended
as to, you know, what instrument it would be. So I applied, I got it, and so when I got there, I was basically starting a marching band from scratch. They didn't have a band. I mean, they had a concert band, but they didn't have a marching band. They didn't have a rehearsal time. They didn't have a rehearsal location. They didn't have a uniform. They didn't have a band handbook. They didn't even have a football team. One of the things a lot of people don't know is that UNCP, they started the marching band before they started the football team.
Wow.
because the chancellor knew that he was eventually going to go for trying to get football, and he wanted band in place before all that happened.
Well, that's pretty.
So I was there for 11 years, but really only the first like 3 or 4 was I actually the marching band director. After a certain point in time, the percussion program had grown to the point of where we had to we could bring someone in as we were getting ready to start actually having football. We were able to bring Marty Spitzer in to actually take over the marching band part. So at that point, I was just teaching percussion. So percussion ensemble, I was doing some contemporary ensemble, world percussion, steel drum band, all of that kind of stuff. Was there for 11 years, non-tenure track position, and it was a great job, and I was really enjoying it, but then I got wind that the University of North Alabama was coming open, that Ian Moyer was leaving. And, you know, if you refer back to when I said I met my wife in Birmingham, it's because my wife's from Tuscaloosa. And so the UNA job was a chance to, at a certain point, your career advancement starts to become more about, what's going to get me closer to my family, what's going to make, everything easier in that regard. And there's a big difference between driving 2 hours to visit the grandparents to driving 11 hours to visit my grandparents.
Yeah.
So applied for this job. It was a late search just because of when Ian knew that he was going to leave and everything. I actually got the job about 2 weeks before band camp move started and moved to Florence, Alabama the day before band camp started.
Wow.
So it was that was a lot.
Yeah.
There.
I can imagine.
And then, well, let's see if I can. And then, so then after that, I have been here now for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Actually had to reapply for my job. Because when I took the job, it was a 1-year appointment.
Right.
And so I had to go all of that process again. The most interesting part of it was they were having a phone interview with people that I had worked with who were sitting in an office directly underneath my office, calling me on the phone up in my office to do the phone interview. Things got weird. There were a couple of days when I knew that they had other candidates in that I had to just disappear from campus for a couple of days and stuff. And so then I've been here 6 years now, got tenure here last year, and it's been
Congratulations.
good. The program here, I've been here for 6 years. We performed at BOA Grand Nationals 3 times, which is exceedingly just not done. We've got great students. It's much easier to, it's a bigger program than where I was.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are not as challenging. So I'm not saying it's easy, but there are some things that are just inherently a little bit easier. So.
Yeah, it's always interesting going from program to program because every school has their own, pros and cons, and not everything really would work one place really works somewhere else, or vice versa. So that's a very good point. I got my undergrad at Delta State, and
with Josh, right?
Yeah, with Josh, and then I taught public school for a little bit, and then Dr. Mike Vercelli offered me a assistantship with him for the World Music Program all the way up in West Virginia. And so I was like, sure, why not? I'll do it. And so, which was fantastic because I got to learn and see a totally different perspective and learn from different teachers. Like you said, going to New Mexico, that was like that experience for me. It was like, oh man, there's so much and what I learned from Josh was really, really great. And you know, it got me to where I needed to be. And then this was like just the next step, going into the next step. And so that was really, really cool. And I got to learn from, you know, George Willis and Mike Riccelli, and got to hang out with Brian Wolf. And then Mark Riley comes in every now and then. Now he's on the faculty there. He's starting this fall. And so it's like, it's really, really cool, just the connections that you make with people. And then you see, you start seeing connections from people that, like, it's like, how do you know so-and-so? And it's like, well, they studied with me, or, you know, well, my student was with them, and then that happens, and it's really, really cool. And so it's really works together, you know, not just in your learning as a musician, but just in your life too, because then eventually that's the people who you end up calling on, you know, or like, hey, what do you think about this? And, you know, because every bit of that as a community is really important.
Well, and I think too, you know, one of the things that I preach to my students all the time is, you know, none of us are going to be the same person that any of our teachers were. You know, we're all going to have different interests. We're all going to have different experiences. And I'm a big believer that the wider ranging those experiences are, the more you're going to discover, like, who you are as a musician, as an artist, as a person. You know, I tell my students all the time, I'm not a big fan of them, you know, staying around for graduate school. I'm like, you've heard everything that I need, that you know what I'm going to tell you before I tell it to you. You need to go hear the same thing from somebody else. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so huge on, like, you know, the guest artist thing and stuff, you know. Because I know people that are wary about bringing guest artists in, and I just can't understand that, because 99.9% of the time they're saying the exact same things I'm telling them in slightly different words. Now, I will admit I'm particular about who I do bring in, because I load it. I bring in the people that I know are going to do that too. But yeah, I just think I think you have to see a lot of different things and experience a lot of different things. Because otherwise you're just sort of so in such a small, like, shell that you can't ever break out into like more stuff. And the thing that I've really noticed over the years is how interconnected the all of this just is. You know, from everybody knows everybody else. You know, you are never far removed from knowing somebody. So you have to be a cool person, or you're not going to last. And
it's very
by
true.
the same token, learning Middle Eastern drumming, and then learning African drumming, and then, you know, studying timpani, and like all the years doing the marching thing and stuff like that. Like, all of that kind of has come into, like, now I really narrow it down to these few things are universal to everything else that you're going to do. You know, if you master these concepts, then you can go. Now, you may know just enough to be dangerous on some of these instruments. But you at least know enough that you can, like, Jeff Moore uses the term transferability all the time. You know, and I've really, as I've gotten older, started to realize how important that is. You know, when I teach world percussion stuff, I'm like, you know, it all boils down to basically a high sound, a low sound, a muffled sound, some sort of, like, that's kind of universal through all the different styles. And so if you get that down as a concept, then whatever instrument it is that gets thrown in front of you, you may not have had a lot of chance to play it. Like, they hand you this for an orchestra gig or something like that, and you have to figure it out. You at least have enough of a basis to be able to start piece it together.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Josh.
And so Yeah, I just think over the years, it really, make good sound.
Yeah.
Like that's the number one thing on anything that you do.
Yep.
If it sounds bad, it sounds bad. Period.
Yep. That's right. That's right. I preach. It's what kind of sound do you want to make, and before you can make and understand how to get that sound, you got to know what a good sound is supposed to be on that instrument. What is that full, rich sound that is supposed to be? And then once you get that and understand that concept, then it's like, okay, now we can dive into it to where we can talk about what other sounds we can get, and then it just all applies, like trying to get your ear to thinking about what are you doing,
Yeah, and it really, the sound thing, you have to, like, going back to the guest artist thing, you have to have heard those people live. Like, being, I left this out, but I studied with Nancy Zeltzman for like 3 summers up at her house in Princeton. And, like, awesome. Being in her room with her marimba, like, 2 or 3 times a week, like, the way her sound and approach is so unique. Like, I can pick her playing out from anything else because her sound is so unique. And, just taking that approach and then starting to apply it to other things that we're doing. Yeah. It's also, I think the other thing to keep it that I deal with a lot lately is the percussion world is so vast. Like my favorite Steve Schick line that percussion is a concept, it's not an instrument.
Yeah.
Right? And I think about that a lot. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that you've got to have a good concept of just sound in general, because we're going to be asked to do so many different things along the way. And a lot of them are going to even be foreign to us.
Yeah.
And so we've got to at least be able to have a concept of how to create a good sound, period.
Yeah.
To be able to survive that experience.
This is really good because I've had discussions before with other professors and talking about curriculum and talking about the undergraduate music curriculum for a percussionist, and thinking about, we've set a standard of, snare, keyboard, timpani, and, sometimes multiple, if that in there, and it's like, well, where do we fit in all the other things? And then your mindset here covers really all of it. If you just think about it, not so much as an instrument, but as well, think about the techniques applying to everything. Think about how these apply to, okay, what if you just did the same thing on a different instrument? It's like, okay, and then think about that way.
Well, and it really comes down to also, the way that we have the program structured here is very different, I think. Especially, it's not different for a lot of like larger schools and stuff, but it's different for like a school of our size. I mean, we have 25 percussion majors here, but we have 7 percussion faculty.
Yeah.
And the way that it's broken down is, we have Andy Crosby, who's like one of the foremost Bowron teachers around. He teaches Bowron. But he's busy. He teaches in the public schools and stuff, so he also does our percussion methods class. Yeah. He's out there in the schools doing that, knowing what they need to know and stuff. Tyler Tolles is a prodigy on jazz vibes. So he does jazz vibes for us. Mark Katsounis is a New York hand drummer, like plays with all the major dance companies in New York as an accompanist. Plays on Broadway and stuff like that. Tom Hurst, I mean, he's Tracy Lawrence's touring drummer in Nashville. I was like, we're 2 hours from Nashville. How do we not have a connection to that?
Exactly.
So we originally started. Rich Redmond taught drum set here for a year.
Yeah.
And then because Rich is the kind of guy that has 5,000 careers going at any one time. He realized that like the travel and stuff wasn't going to work for him, and that's when he recommended Tom. And so like we have like these specialists in these areas, so like all of our students can take lessons with any of these people.
Yeah.
Then we have Dr. Zach Webb, who's another Hart alum, that his job is predominantly, he becomes like the Sherpa for the incoming students, the incoming freshmen.
Yeah.
Right? So they all have like one teacher. So
Yeah.
he's kind of getting them the foundational everything of what they need to know and stuff. And then when they get older, they actually split between myself and Alice Pan. And so they're actually studying with Alice and I both at the same time. So in their lessons with me, they're doing snare drum, timpani, tambourine, triangle, multi-percussion, and then with Alice, they're doing marimba and vibes, hardcore. And so what we've done is we've tried to break it down to where we all have interests, and we all have strengths.
Yeah.
And one of the weird things that I found about the whole percussion thing is the idea that the percussion teacher has to be the guru of everything.
Yeah. That's true.
In the woodwind world, we've kind of gotten past the concept of the woodwind teacher.
Yeah.
You don't have the flute person also necessarily teaching bassoon and oboe and clarinet and saxophone. And, it was really Ben Toth and studying up there at the Hart that made me start to realize, why don't we do this with other areas of percussion too?
Yeah, exactly.
And now I will say that I've been very fortunate that I've had administrators that, after we talked for a while, got that.
Right.
And they've been creative. Tyler lives in San Diego. Mark lives in New York. They both teach via Skype. And we have one of our practice rooms is actually hardwired for internet. And it has a camera and a microphone in it and everything, and they go in there, flip the computer on, sign in for their lessons, and talk back and forth with them and everything.
Nice.
So the administration have been understanding of being creative in that way.
That's really cool.
Which has been cool because, like, what I told them when I was going through this was, like, I can teach drum set, and I do teach drum set, but I'm not going to teach drum set the way that a guy who literally is going on stage every night to play drum set for a living is going to teach drum set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so the students have been very receptive to it. Like, I think they seem to really like. They've also said that having like the split lessons and stuff keeps them more focused. Because like when they go into a lesson, with Alice, they know what they're doing with her. Whereas before, when they were just studying with me and they were doing snare drum and timpani and keyboards, and we were trying to fit in auxiliary and we were trying to fit in drum set, they never really knew what we were going to get to in the hour. They didn't know how much we were going to get into in the hour. It was really easy for us we all know how easy it is to get bogged down in a lesson.
Oh, yeah.
And, lose track of, like, where you are along the way. And suddenly the whole hour's gone.
Yeah.
They said it's actually helped them with their planning a little bit. Kind of know that, all right, I'm going in with Dr. Pan now. We're going to work on this Abe stuff, for the next half hour or whatever.
Now, here's a question. How does that go as far as, like, credits go? Are they typically, I think lessons are typically 2-hour credits at most places for an hour.
Right.
Are you now doing 30-minute lesson with you, 30-minute lesson with them, or is it and it's a credit each, or is it still 2 and you just kind of divide it up, or how does that work?
It's a credit each.
Okay.
So like when they're registering with me and with Alice and I, they take 1 credit with me and 1 credit with Alice.
Gotcha.
So the math all comes out the same. We're just rethinking how it fits into that math.
Gotcha.
So what we do is, for the underclassmen, they take 2 credit hours with Zach. That's required. Mm-hmm. For the upperclassmen, they take a credit with me and a credit with Alice. Now, along the way, we encourage them to take, at least 1 extra lesson. Like, we want them to ideally do a year of vibes, a year of hand drumming, a year of drum set, so that they've at least got, like, a decent background in that. We have banded tuition here, And so, basically they're paying the same amount no matter how many hours they take. So a lot of times it's pretty easy for them to fit that extra hour in there without really having to pay any more for it.
That's nice. Yeah.
So it's been good. I mean, it's been an experiment. Last year was our first year, like, really going hardcore into it.
Yeah.
Our biggest struggle, honestly, is registering. Anybody that does academic advising knows how hard it is to get students to register for the right thing.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to get them to register for 3 different lessons, when sometimes it's hard enough to get them registered for one class lesson,
yep.
that becomes the trick. I've got like a giant spreadsheet that is like all 7 faculty and all 25 to 30 students, and how many credits with each person they're supposed to be taking at any given time. And so it's really, the way we have it structured now is it's almost its own department. I'm almost like another department chair within the department, just because of the number of faculty and everything.
Right.
But it's been cool. I get to work with awesome people, and the students get. I think one of the big things is the students get to explore things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I struggle with the whole. I know that we need to learn how to play keyboard. We need to learn how to play standard. We need to do all that. But once they get out of school, there's 5,000 different directions they could go with their career.
That is true.
And I look at it as, we look at the undergrad experience as we give them a chance to explore a lot of those different things. And
does
so
this
then,
help?
If they, sorry.
Does this help? I know there's some students who, especially freshmen, a lot of people do this as, with any major when they go into college, they have an idea of what they want to do, but maybe when they get in, they realize that's not quite what they want to do, or maybe it's a different version of that. Has the different faculty and all this, has it helped them decide whether or not they want to do music education or performance, or do you encourage them to go in one or the other? Do you let them decide on their own? What is your conversation with them whenever you talk about what specific major that they want to do?
It's an interesting conversation. The first thing that I tell them is I'm upfront with you. The music education degree is the only degree that you're probably going to walk out of this building the minute you graduate with a potential job.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I put it into the perspective of, you don't have to do a music ed degree to end up going to teach. Yeah. With lateral entry and, 5th-year master's programs and stuff like that, there are options there. So what I tell them is that you can do these other things, but just know that they're a trickier path. They're a longer path to doing it. Yeah. But I also know that, we have a lot of students that, their first thought is, okay, if it says I'm doing music ed, this is my one-way path into, I'm going to be a middle school band director the rest of my life. And for a lot of percussionists, that's not necessarily what they're interested in. We have a music ed degree, we offer a performance degree, we have a Bachelor of Arts / Bachelor of Science, which are the same degree depending on whether you want to take a foreign language or not, basically. So those are the degrees that we offer. And the studio is really kind of evenly split. We're pretty particular about who we will let be a performance major, because we kind of look at it as, if you're doing a performance major, you're basically saying, I'm going to live or die as a person on how well I play.
Yep.
And you have to be really, really committed to go that route.
Yep.
And then, so we've got several that do the music ed thing, but music ed, there's so much non-music stuff involved with that now.
Yes.
That a lot of the students honestly kind of get turned off to it, just because, they're like, well, I've got to do 40 hours of observation when I could be doing 40 hours of playing.
Yep.
Which is why a lot of them will choose to, go like the BA route or something like that. And then knowing that they could come back and in a year or a year and a half, finish the music ed part and have a master's degree.
Yeah.
And then go out and teach. The other thing that we started last year is we have a percussion specialist certificate, which, that came from talking to a lot of former students and a lot of people, people like Ian Grom and Robbie Green, and a lot of those guys that are out, being the percussion person at programs. And a lot of that conversation originated with these skills that we're needing to have when we're out doing these jobs, especially in like public schools where they're having to do like high level marching band, they're having to do the WGI thing along with percussion ensembles. They're like, we're not taught any of this in a music ed program.
Yeah.
You have to be a sound designer. You have to be a visual designer. You've got to be able to design props. You've got to be able to do costuming. And so we started looking at it because we have a lot of students that are interested in like, that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, they may end up doing another career or something, but they want to still teach percussion somewhere.
Right.
So we started looking around and was like, well, we're uniquely set up here because we're in the Shoals, which, is a huge recording industry history with Fame and Muscle Sound, and Jason Isbell's Single Lock Studios is here and everything. So we have an entertainment industry program with classes in MIDI, classes in live audio design, classes in we have that here already. We have a theater program that had a design class that we were able to incorporate with it, where they're taking basics of scenic design, like how to figure out what's going to look good on a stage or something like that, and how to build a set without it falling apart the first time a kid stands on it. So they take a couple of classes in the entertainment industry. They take a class in the theater program. We have the obligatory percussion repertoire class that a lot of schools have. We also have a pedagogy of marching percussion class, which is that's one of my favorite classes because we make the deep dive into the whole marching scene. One class was totally around the East Coast versus West Coast approach debate. And so like that, there's like some history. We work on they write a warm-up packet. Their final project is designing the beginning of an indoor show.
Nice.
So they have to orchestrate it. They have to write basic drill. They have to have a concept for what the theme is. They have to have a concept for what the costuming could look like and stuff like that, just so that they've had to work their way through all of that thought process. And then they take composition. So we've got a composer on faculty that they take just straight up composition with. And then I teach marching percussion arranging that they take for a semester also. So all of that together is just basically when they go out and they get a job at one of these schools that is going to want them to, start an indoor line or something like that, they can at least hit the ground running with it.
Yeah.
We know that in a class, like the live sound class in the entertainment industry or something like that, they're not going to get everything that they need to know, but they're at least going to know how to flip on the mixing board.
Yep.
And what the different types of cable are, and for the love of all that is holy, how to wrap the cable correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's, we've been very fortunate. The faculty was really supportive of us starting that program, and they didn't have to be, because they could have said, well, this is going to take away from, students doing the music ed thing. It's like, well, honestly, a lot of the percussionists, that's not what they're wanting. They don't want to be the band director. They want to be the guy that's doing all the percussion stuff.
Yeah.
And these schools are wanting more and more of the percussion stuff.
Yep.
because it keeps kids excited. Kids like marching.
Yep.
You know, so it's we've had that for a year. We're the first people that are going through that are going to wrap it up this next year.
You know,
Yeah.
So we have it set up to where you're not required to be a music major to do that. You know,
That's
it's a little bit more work if you're not a music major because you're going to have to take some lessons and stuff like that along the way too.
right.
But if you want to do that as a side gig, you're going to be a whole lot more prepared to do it. You know, and it's been good too because like the arranging stuff, you know, we get a lot of guys that are we get a lot of people that are battery people that have no concept of how to write for a front ensemble. So they have to write for a front ensemble. We get front ensemble people that don't have the foggiest idea how to write for a battery. They end up having to write for a battery.
Yeah.
So,
which is good skills to have because it's both different concepts in a lot of ways. Sometimes.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
So it's been fun. You know, it is different, and you know, a lot of people were like, "Well, what's the job market for that?" And I was like, "Well, what's the job market for much of anything right now, necessarily? You know, you have to make your own way."
Yeah.
In so many areas at this point, anyway.
Yeah.
That you know.
And the more you have,
one more. Yeah.
You know.
I mean, this is just one more way for them to do it.
Yeah, you're just going to be more marketable and be able to sell yourself in a different way that you can stand out. No, for sure.
So it's been good. And I mean, we, you know, with the history of the band here, we get a lot of kids that are really interested in the marching thing, and they have an interest in continuing in that down the road. And so the more that we can make it to where they're not just the slam drag fighter pilot going out to teach the line with the drumsticks sticking out of their back pocket, and you know, I tell a battery person that knows all the front ensemble stuff is a lot more marketable than just a battery person.
Yep, that is true. That is very true. Well, that's awesome. Well, man, we're about out of time.
Okay.
But this has been great. There's a lot of really good discussions, especially for people, you know, or who are wanting to maybe think about going to college for music. You know, these young people who enjoy it, who may not know their options. And I think, you know, a lot of times it's what I try to encourage, especially people who are looking to go to school, and it's like talk to people, like just reach out to different places. Like don't go to just the same place that all your friends are going or whatever. Like it's okay to like figure out where, because in music, that's definitely where you're going to succeed the most. Like find where you think you will grow and like figure out what's going on there. Cause every school in music is like a little different. Like everybody's going to have a little different thing to offer. And I think that's important. And I would like encourage students to just, you know, go out and like email these professors, like maybe go get a lesson, like try to schedule a lesson, visit the campus, you know, try to take this time to do it and do it early, you know. And
well, because I think it's important. Like I tell students all the time, I'll have students come and visit. I'm like, I'll be upfront with you. I hope you come here. I hope that you find that we're the right place to be. But I will also understand that if you decide that this is not, you know, the right place for you. You know, our audition process is very different. We take half an hour to audition a music major. Because they come in, they play a keyboard piece, a snare drum piece, a timpani piece. We require drum set on our music major auditions. We actually have a drum set etude that we have them all play because we want to see like what their coordination and their time and stuff like that is like.
Right.
And then after they play all that, we do a lesson with them. And because our whole thing is we want them to see what it's going to be like to work with us.
Right.
And we, by the flip side, we want to see how they take, you know, being asked to make adjustments and stuff like that.
Right.
So I really think that, it is about fit, and there are huge programs, but at a certain point you may get lost in the huge programs too.
Yeah.
And the other thing is,
True.
when it comes to like recruiting and stuff like that, what I tell, my students are our recruiting. You won't see like on our UNA pages and stuff like that, you will very rarely see anything about me. But you will see tons of stuff about the students and what the students are doing.
Yeah.
Because when students start to look at school here, that's who they're going to be with. A lot of students that come here don't have the foggiest idea who I am. They see the name Tracy and they're expecting a woman. I mean, I'm fully aware that is the case. And so I know that it's the students and the reputation of the students and the program and stuff like that is what is attracting them.
Right.
And so I tell them all the time, I'm like, I know that you're coming here, and I assume that you're going to audition for other places. Go visit those other places.
Yeah.
Talk to the students at those other places.
Yeah.
Talk to the faculty, and then make the decision about if this is going to be the right place for you.
Right.
I mean, I want all the students.
Right.
But I want all the students that feel like this is the place they have to be.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's great. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, well,
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time out and for just discussing things. This is really cool. I hope we can continue to talk in the future.
Yeah.
Now that I'm back in Mississippi and
you have to send me all of your people.
I'll definitely
2 years with you, and then they come to me.
That sounds good. I want
don't
to
send them to that Josh Armstrong guy.
Oh man, oh that's awesome. Well, this is good, man. Thank you so much. I hope we can talk again in the future. And if you ever need anything, my line is always open. And
well, thanks for asking me. This is cool that you're doing this. The amount of like educational type stuff that has sprung up over this summer has just been insane.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. It's given me a chance to, take the opportunity to talk to people. One, some people that I haven't had the chance to talk to, and two, really spark some ideas and like inspire, not just myself, but some other people who maybe watch this or who ask questions or things like that. That's just like, oh man, there's so many other different things that go on, or there's things I haven't thought about. And that's like, I just love keeping that conversation open and like share it with the world,
The percussion field is a huge world with a lot of really awesome people in it.
It is. It really is.
And the more that you can pick, I tell my students that I have 0 original ideas.
Yeah.
And that I will be very open, almost maybe sometimes too open, with where every single idea that I bring up to them has come from. But I think that's important that we're the sum of our parts. But I also think you got to give credit to where it comes from.
That's true. That is very true.
But I appreciate you having me on. This was fun. We talked over email and trying to book gigs and stuff like that. But to actually talk has been good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I hope we can get you out over into the Delta and hang out with me and Josh and maybe we go over to.
I don't know about that Josh guy.
I know, man. He's
Josh,
hard.
Josh is a hoot. Josh is a hoot. I love him. He's great.
Yeah, he's a character for sure.
He is.
Oh man. Well, until next time, man. We'll stay in touch and I hope to see you soon.